Orders of the day, numbers 1 to 4.
Land Transport and Road User Charges Legislation Amendment Bill, Committee Stage. Industry Training and Apprenticeships Amendment Bill, Committee Stage. Social Security Fraud Measures and Debt Recovery Amendment Bill, Committee Stage. Trade Safeguard Measures Bill, Committee Stage, continued.
I declare the House in Committee for consideration of the Land Transport and Road User Charges Legislation Amendment Bill, the Industry Training and Apprenticeships Amendment Bill, the Social Security Fraud Measures and Debt Recovery Amendment Bill, and for further consideration of the Trade Safeguard Measures Bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman.
Members, the House in Committee for consideration of the Land Transport and Road User Charges Legislation Amendment Bill, the Industry Training and Apprenticeship Amendment Bill, and the Social Security Fraud Measures and Debt Recovery Amendment Bill, and further consideration of the Trade Safeguard Measures Bill. We turn first to the Land Transport and Road User Charges Legislation Amendment Bill. The question is that Part 1 stand part. This is debate on clauses 3 to 5. I call Darian Fenton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Labor is very happy to help the government on the passage of this Land Transport and Road User Charges Legislation Amendment Bill, and there's no doubt that in speaking to Part 1, the government needs our assistance with this bill because of the mess that they have created. Going right back to when this road user charges legislation was reviewed way back in, it was passed in 2012 but debated in 2011. And I remember, and I have recalled on several contributions I've made to the House, of speaking to this, the first reading of this bill under urgency last August 2013. And it seems to be a very unfortunate trait of this government that whenever we're talking about anything to do with roads, either it's a mess or it's about putting petrol tax up and hitting hard the people that are struggling out there in the pocket. But as I said, Labor did warn the government way back in 2012 when this bill was passed that the regulation-making process in this bill that would allow the minister to sign it off without public debate would cause problems. And that indeed is what happened. What we told the government then is it broke the basic democratic principle that there should be no taxation without representation. There were no final numbers available for scrutiny in advance of the 2012 bill being passed into law. The actual changes were apparently going to be set by officials at some later date, and I'll get into what actually did happen. And there were a number of submissions suggesting that this regulation power was outside of the role of a bill like the 2012 Road User Charges Act, and in fact broke that basic principle of good lawmaking. And indeed what happened was a mess was created. And the Road User Charges Bill turned out to have some minor anomalies which this bill seeks to correct, and apparently only affect a small number of vehicles and their owners. But what happened was the minister tried to pass a regulation that would allow this particular issue to be resolved through regulation. The Regulations Review Committee did a very good job on scrutinising those regulations and recommended to the House back in 2012 that it be disallowed because they had not followed the process. It was excessive. It allowed excessive regulation-making, decision-making that is outside the comfort zone of this parliament and, in fact, the tradition of this parliament. The minister then did something unprecedented by reinstating the regulations in 2013. Well, that's true. Minister Jerry Brownlee doesn't surprise us with that, but he reinstated it, and it was unprecedented in this Parliament, unprecedented process, reinstated these regulations, and off they went to the Regulations Review Committee again. And what did the Regulations Review Committee say? They said these regulations were outside of the parameters of good lawmaking in this Parliament, and they should be disallowed. So twice, the regulations that are proposed in this bill, the minor reform, the minor anomalies with the road user charges have been the government has tried to sneak them through using their regulation-making power. And thank goodness for the good chairpersonship of Charles Cheval, who was the chairman of the Regulations Review Committee at the time, who did the first disallowance, and then also the Honourable Marion Street, who came another hard-working member who was on the ball and actually recommended to this House that these be disallowed, and that's why, Mr Chair, we ended up in this House under urgency in August 2013 with the Land Transport and Road User Charges Amendment Bill. Now, it's interesting when you think about what we could be doing if we weren't having to waste our time doing this, because it talks about minor anomalies with the Road User Charges Act. Now, there are many more than this minor anomaly with the Road User Charges Act, and I wanted to take the opportunity in the context of Part 1 to talk about some of those, because they are anomalies that have been around for some time. Take the anomaly of light diesel vehicles under 3,500 tonnes who have to pay road user charges. Mr Chair.
The Honourable Member Darian Fenton.
So people up and down the country who have light diesel vehicles, who have purchased them because they want to contribute to sustainable transport in New Zealand, are having to purchase road user charges in addition to purchasing their vehicle. Now, this issue has been raised time and again as road user charges have been debated in the Transport and Industrial Relations Select Committee, and time and again the government has turned their back on those people who use light diesel vehicles. These are not freight vehicles. They have turned their back on them and said, we're not interested in that. We would rather try and sneak through regulations to deal with the issue of fast tractors and other farm vehicles. So that's one anomaly. And I would say it's not a minor anomaly. I would say it's a major anomaly. Another anomaly that has come through at Select Committee when we've talked about road user charges is the issue of road user charges on motorhomes and camper vans. Now, I've had a number of older people ring me up in the last little while since the road user charges changed, and they tell me they are paying for 11 tonnes when their vehicle is actually only 7 tonnes. And somehow, with the changes that were made under the Road User Charges Act, they are paying $50 more a year. What we're talking about are retired people on minimal incomes, on restricted incomes, who have bought a camper van or converted a van into a holiday bus, who are now finding that they cannot go on holiday because A, they're not earning enough money because it's really, really tough out there, and B, $50 is a lot of money for them. So that's a minor anomaly. Maybe it's a major one, because I certainly know the Motorhomes Association has been to our Select Committee and expressed their concerns about this on a number of occasions. So, Mr Speaker, in Part 2 I'll talk a little bit more about some of the anomalies, because there's some particularly bad ones that I want to bring to the attention of the House that I've come across in the recess. But I would say that Labor is supporting this because we think it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to correct anomalies when they're made. It's just a pity we have to waste House time on doing this. House time and something that was urgent back in August 2013, and David Bennett might not think it's important to debate these issues properly, but actually the Labor Party does think it's enormously possible. And so the proposals under this bill are to exempt fast tractors, which I found quite amusing, really. Fast tractors that operate over 40 kilometres per hour on the road from road user charges and subject them to an annual charge in lieu of road user charges to cover the costs they impose on the road network, and exempt all unregistered vehicles, that's vehicles exempt from registration or not required to be registered or operated under trade plates from road user charges, and apply to them an annual charge as well. Now, that's all very reasonable. It shouldn't have been missed out in the first place. The Minister should not try to sneak this through by way of regulation, and he should not have tried to trick those on the Regulations Review Committee by reinstating the disallowed regulation and trying to sneak it in that way, because he made a mess, he made a stuff-up, and here we are in this Parliament debating Clause 1 at great expense, actually, great expense, when actually those who drive fast tractors will be looking forward to having this legislation go through, and it should never have happened in the first place. Thanks, Mr Speaker.
Good speech.
I call the honourable member Julianne Genter.
Thank you, Mr Chair.